If a man can realize, a woman's mind is more like having 100 different tabs open on your browser, and they're all running simultaneously, flashing up as things are moving. It's just a constant flashing of window after window after window. And we're all going, what the heck is going on? Close some windows, close some tabs. There's no red X. We can't understand why you can't just take the car box and put it back in and then pull out the kid box and then put that back and then pull out the laundry box or whatever. And the one thing that men have that women cannot understand is men have a quote unquote nothing box where we can actually think about absolutely nothing, and it drives a woman crazy. She'll come in and see him sit in front of the TV, just staring, maybe even surfing the channels. She's like, what are you thinking about? And he says, nothing. You can't. Like, physically, a woman cannot think about nothing. There's always something on your mind. In the back of your mind, you're thinking about the plumber's coming tomorrow and the kids need to go to soccer practice. Got to make sure my mom gets this and my dad gets that and whatever else. There's always stuff going on. So you have a massive to-do list that never ends. And a man can simply close all the boxes, and all he does is open his nothing box, and there's nothing there. And he just veggies.
Hello, this is Crystal Meach with Tao of the Heart YouTube channel. And today I have my guest, Brian Strubhar. Did I say that right?
You did?
And today we're talking about intimacy. Intimacy with ourselves and then in our relationships. So I'm just going to hand this over to Brian. How do you want to get started?
Well, it's interesting when you start talking about relationships. There's a lot of directions that you could go with that. My wife and I have been working with relationships for about 18 years now. And so we see a lot. Now, we work mostly with couples. Once in a while, we'll have a single, but most of the time we work with couples. And we find that there's so much against traditional marriage, just distractions, life, careers, kids, so many activities, especially if you have kids in activities, it just drives you crazy almost as the parents. And so one of the things we try to do is help couples thrive instead of struggling to survive, because it seems like so many times we find ourselves just struggling to pay the bills and get by and get the kids to their next practice and whatever else. And so one of the things we try to do is help people learn how to communicate through all those struggles and all those frustrations so that they can really connect together and actually thrive in their own relationship together. Because when your kids leave the house, you don't want to wake up one morning and go, well, who are you? And after being married 22 years, I don't have all the answers, but I found a lot of things that work, and I found quite a few things that definitely don't.
Do you think with the recent pandemic, well, I guess it was a few years ago now, but all of a sudden people woke up to the fact that they were like strangers, like so busy, and then all of a sudden they're stuck in the house together?
It definitely woke some people up, and I think that when you're suddenly stuck at home with your spouse and your kids and whatever else, you suddenly realize, in essence, how alone you are and how little you know the person or the people in your household. And I think that that really helped to wake some people up. I think there's a lot of people that simply just went into their own quote man cave or whatever you want to call it, she shed for the women, whatever. I don't know. There's so many different ways that people reacted to it. It's hard to know what everybody thought when they did, so to speak, get shut in, if you want to call it that, or locked up, whatever you want to call it. But it definitely helped to wake up a lot of people to realize we need work. This is not where I want to be. I want to fix what I can, do better. I'd rather thrive instead of just struggling to survive, which is, one of the challenges we all face.
So what happens when, say, you know that you want to make some changes, but maybe your partner doesn't?
Well, that's where communication comes in. You have to work together. Obviously, you can't make anybody love you or continue to love you. You can't make them continue in the relationship, but you can make them want to continue by being a quote unquote perfect partner. And that's the challenge is, would I want to be married to me? Would she want to be married to her, so to speak? You have to make yourself attractive to your partner and stay attractive. And one of the big keys that we've found in that is continue to date. Every week we try to go on a date together, sometimes 2 dates a week. It just depends on the week, but most of the time we try to carve out 2 or 3 hours every week where it's just the two of us going to dinner or going to the park or wherever. We're carving out some time that we're not just shopping, we're not just eating, but we get time to talk about us. How are you doing? How are you feeling? What's going on? What's frustrating you? And that way you can really connect and understand what's going on inside, so to speak, and how the relationship's doing. So I feel like continual dating, you don't just date to get to know someone, date to stay in touch with the person. You have to be intentional in your relationship in order to stay fresh and clean, so to speak. You have to stay, in touch with that person because we all change as life and seasons change. As your kids grow up, we as adults also change. As careers change, the economy around us changes, the challenges in life and marriage, bills come and go, but we have a lot of things that continue to change and we have to quote change with it, if that makes sense. And so doing that together requires communication. And clear communication is probably the biggest struggle we see in most relationships. Even if it's parent to child, a lot of times there's miscommunication.
Okay. And I guess my question is how does a couple carve out time in their busy lives?
For themselves? You're talking for
Well,
themselves or for
for
intimacy
themselves or
or
even just to
both?
go on a date.
Yeah. So we usually schedule it right into our schedule. Like for us, we usually do every Friday night. And so we just know we do not schedule anything else on Friday night. That's our time. And so the kids know that, they plan to either be at their grandparents or they cook for themselves or we'll, drop them off dinner before we go to dinner or whatever. And so you just have to plan ahead. And by putting it in your schedule, just like if you go to the gym every day or you go to church every week or whatever else you do on a regular basis, if you take your kid to soccer practice every week, you put it in your schedule. So schedule one-on-one time with your partner. And that's one of the things we do every day. We try to do at least 20 to 30 minutes where we connect every day, either getting up in the morning or going to bed at night. Sometimes one of us has to get up early and run someone to a doctor's appointment, or she's taking care of her folks a lot now too. And so that creates extra, I guess you could call it drama or extra responsibility to where you have to get up early. Like tomorrow morning, she's taking her mom for an eye doctor. So that's just one of the things you have to do. She has to leave really early to go to her mom's, get her mom ready, take her out, and she has almost an hour drive to the doctor's appointment. So, those are things that may create a hiccup, if you want to call it, into our morning routine, but we make up for it. Now we just move it to the evening when she gets home, and now we get a chance in the evening. Now we'll sit down and talk. How did your day go? What happened? And now we can touch base and stay in tune with each other so that the home runs smoothly.
Okay.
Now, it's a little different when it comes to intimacy. A lot of couples, so to speak, leave it up to happenstance, and if it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't. It's common that a lot of couples, you know, will sometimes go weeks or even months without it, which we don't recommend. We recommend minimum of once a week because you need time to intimately connect. Now, there's more to intimacy than just body to body. There's a lot more to it, especially for women. They love the emotional connection before the physical. Men prefer physical and then emotional. So you have to kind of give and take a little bit. Obviously, for some women, if your husband's not being really emotionally connected, then you may need to offer some physical so that he's now ready for emotional connection. And vice versa. If the wife isn't ready, then you need to offer emotional connection before she's ready for physical. So there has to be some give and trade. There has to be, it's not really a bartering system, but it's more or less, see if you can make the other person happy and desire what you want. So if I'm wanting intimacy, then I need to try to figure out how can I relieve her stress, her frustrations? How can I help her out? If she has dishes to do and floors to vacuum, then I can help with some of those additional household chores for the day and relieve that stress. And now she feels relaxed and she's ready to enjoy some time with me.
Yeah, I can't say enough about that. I do feng shui and organizing and decluttering.
Yep.
And just this week, I had a woman that she actually homeschooled her children.
Yep. My wife
And
homeschools hers.
like, I give her a lot of credit. Like, I came in and
Yep.
it was like a tornado. And, and I was like, um, and the first thing that I said was, "Do you have a membership to the YMCA?" Because the YMCA has programs for homeschool children.
Yeah, they do.
So, like that's an hour where, your child is going to a class. So you have that hour to de-stress
Veg.
basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Some
Who
some me
cares
time
about
for
your
me.
house? I mean, come on.
Grab a book
You're
and
not
sit
going
in
to
a
be
chair in the
anywhere.
corner. Yeah.
Yeah. You're not going to be anywhere until you first have clarity in the mind and the body.
Yeah. No, and we all need personal time, and that's one of the things that a lot of men don't realize. If your wife's been, quote, unquote, "stressed" all day, running around with the kids, making food, cleaning up their messes all day, whatever, you know, when you come home, don't just put your feet up. In essence, put your work boots on. Help to lift the load around the house. Take the kids for an hour, let her go get a bubble bath, or, start doing the dishes or whatever it is that needs done. Help fold the laundry, whatever needs to be done so that she can now veg with you or relax with you. That's one of the biggest things that can help put in, put the person into the mindset of this is someone who cares about me, and now they truly want to connect with you. And that's where physical and intimacy is easier when you're feeling emotionally connected and supported.
Yeah, I think there's that, and I also feel like the timing of how men and women get their needs met is different. Like, if
Correct.
you're in mother
Absolutely.
mode, you're gonna
Yep.
everyone else is gonna get their needs met before you. Whereas
Yeah. So
with men, it's if this is what I need or if this is what she needs, we start there. That's first. So
yep.
it's kind of like backwards. So how do you line up the timing for the two?
It's kind of a juggling in a sense, but learning how to read your partner is very important. And I think that it really helps if you can have that clear communication. Talk to each other, ask them, how are you doing? How are you feeling? Are you feeling stressed? Do you feel relaxed? Do you need to take some time to read a book or, catch up with your friend on the phone or check on your mom or whatever it might be? Give them space to do what they need to do so that they can feel like their day is complete. Now they can, in essence, begin to close down some boxes. Now, there's an interesting difference in the way men and women think and reason, I guess you could say, or their brain operates. And we like to use it in some of our couples focus groups. It's called Laugh Your Way to a Better Marriage. It's a friend of ours, Mark Gunger, who's up in Wisconsin, probably close to where you're at. And the interesting thing is he talks about men's brains and women's brains. And the difference is men tend to think in boxes. Like we have a box for the car, a box for the house, a box for the wife, a box in the basement for the mother-in-law, etc. However, women tend to be more like the internet superhighway. Everything is connected. So it's more like a big ball of wire where the car is connected to the house and to the bills and to the mother and the mother-in-law and the kids. And, the car's broke and the dishwasher doesn't work right. And, the laundry needs taken out of the washer and put in the dryer, and everything's connected and she cannot close the windows. And so if a man can realize a woman's mind is more like having 100 different tabs open on your browser and they're all running simultaneously, flashing up as things are moving, it's just a constant flashing of window after window after window. And then we're all going, what the heck is going on? Close some windows, close some tabs. And women are like, I can't. I don't know how to shut the tabs. There's no red X, right? And men just have one box. We
Exactly.
can't we can't understand why you can't just take the car box and put it back in and then pull out the kid box and then put that back and then pull out the laundry box or whatever. And the one thing that men have that women cannot understand is men have a quote unquote nothing box where we can actually think about absolutely nothing, and it drives a woman crazy. She'll come in and see him sit in front of the TV just staring, maybe even surfing the channels. She's like, what are you thinking about? And he says, nothing. Well, how can you think about nothing? You can't. Like physically, a woman cannot think about nothing. There's always something on your mind. In the back of your mind, you're thinking about the plumber's coming tomorrow and the kids need to go to soccer practice. And I got to make sure, my mom gets this and my dad gets that and whatever else. There's always stuff going on. So you have a massive to do list that never ends. And a man can simply close all the boxes and all he does is open his nothing box and there's nothing there. And he just veggies. So it's a lot of fun. You'll get a
Isn't
big
it
laugh
called
out of
is it called putzing or puttering? I can't remember.
I don't know,
Do they call it
but
puttering or putzing?
probably putzing. But yeah, but there's a lot of difference between the way men and women process even an event or a situation that happens, and so just understanding that your wife or your partner, for example, may have a different opinion or perspective, it's not necessarily wrong, and that's one of the cool things about feelings. Feelings aren't necessarily right or wrong. You can't necessarily change the way you feel, but you can choose not to operate based on the way you feel. And so you can't make every decision just because you feel like it or you don't feel like it. That'll get you in trouble. Like, I don't feel like paying my bills. Well, guess what? They're soon going to shut your water, your power, your whatever off. So you have to pay your bills. Whether you feel like it or not, there's things you have to do. And that's just kind of life. And so sometimes we get used to that. But when it comes to intimacy and connecting with your spouse, sometimes you have to carve out time. Put it in your schedule if you have to. We like to do, a date a week, and then usually once a month we try to do a day out together somewhere, and maybe, go spend a day at the park, or we'll, go spend a day at a cabin or whatever, just to get a little bit of us time. And then usually once a year we do a longer, like a 1 week vacation together, just the two of us. And so that's just kind of a way that we try to stay close and connected and on par, so to speak, with each other so that we're on the same page. If you're not playing the same book, even, it's really hard to be on the same page.
Exactly.
Yep, there's a lot of challenges. It's like a major juggling, I guess you could say. And it's almost like you're playing with someone that doesn't even see the game in the same light you do. It's like you're playing two different games. Like, you've probably seen, there's a book that men are from Mars and women are from Venus. And it's like we have two different operating systems. It's like we're from two different worlds, in a sense, two different planets. And so understanding that we see it different. And one of the things I love to mess with couples when we're in our focus groups, I said, if I sent you guys out and I gave you a description on a piece of paper, I told the wife, go out, climb in your car, and then write a description of everything you can see from inside your car. And then I tell the husband to go out. Now you take the outside of the car and write down everything you can see on the outside of that car. They're going to have two completely different descriptions, right? But it's the same car. It's just two different perspectives. And it's the same thing in life. It don't matter if you're riding side by side in your car and somebody speeds through the intersection, hits somebody, you both saw it from two different perspectives. And you're going to have different, in
Mhm.
essence, descriptions and, feelings about what happened or what should happen going forward. And so therefore you just have to understand, neither one of you are right, neither one of you are wrong. It's just different. And different's okay. There's strength in dissidence, just like in music. There wouldn't be four-part harmony if they were all the same. So there's beauty in having a different perspective, and there's strength in having opposing perspectives. That way you can see opposite sides. Just like, even if you had both partners give you a description, one from the front and one from the back of a vehicle, one's going to have red lights, one's going to have white lights. One's going to have a windshield, one's not. One's going to have windshield wipers, one is not. So you have to look at, you're still looking at the same vehicle. Even though you're both on the outside, looking in, so to speak, you're going to see two different things. Does that make sense?
Yes, it makes me think of the example that I always give is, like, women, oftentimes, they'll see a sock on the floor, and
Hmm.
that sock will just drive her nuts. It's not in the basket, and a man can just, like, walk by. He doesn't
He
even
can
see the
step on
sock
it if
because
he
it's
wants
not.
to. He don't.
Yeah, because it's not part of his result.
Yeah, he doesn't care. It doesn't phase him.
Yeah. Mhm. But for
Now,
a
when it
woman,
comes
it just
to
drives her absolutely nuts.
one of the other interesting things that can create a lot of conflict in relationships, especially if you are physically intimate with your partner, is men usually can climax, so to speak, in a very short period of time. They say like 2 to 4 minutes, and most women's take 20 to 40 minutes. So you can imagine the frustration, in a sense, if you're both trying to get to that peak of the mountain, so to speak. It's really hard if your partner goes in 2 minutes and you've got 38 more minutes to go. You know, he's done crashed and been dreaming for a half hour before you're even getting close. So it's just something that men and women need to understand. There's a difference in our, psychological, there's a difference in our emotions, there's a difference in the way we feel about things, and then there's a difference in the way our bodies respond, how quickly they respond, how quickly they enter that arousal period, and then they begin to climb. So that's just part of the process, is understanding your partner. Sometimes it's reversed, but in general, men are quick and women take a lot longer. So we look at it as women are more like a crock pot and men are more like a microwave. It doesn't take long. For a man, you just have to show up naked and he's good to go. For a woman, it takes a lot more. You got to talk to her for 2 hours first.
Mhm.
So it's just, people have
Yeah.
to understand the difference. And that's the fun of, married couples and couples in general, is there's a lot of difference between men and women. And We all have to explore the one we got stuck with, so to speak.
Mhm. Yeah, and I think, there's another, like, layer to this, like, taking and getting versus receiving and,
There
giving.
is. Yeah, giving and
Because
taking versus giving and receiving are 2 different things.
could you
Yeah,
talk a little
taking is
bit more
almost
about
like
that?
an
Because
yeah, taking is more like an attitude of entitlement, like give it to me or else, where receiving is they are giving it and now you're receiving it as a gift. And I think that's one of the interesting differences mentally. We often think, well, I already gave to you, so now it's my turn to take from you. And that's not the way it should be. It should be they should want to give you time, attention, physical intimacy, whatever. You don't just take it from them. And that's another thing that we teach strongly on when it comes to physical intimacy. You should never be forcing your partner or spouse to do something they're uncomfortable with or that's painful. It needs to be for mutual pleasure. If it's not mutually pleasurable, then probably should be off the table. It should not be an option to hurt or abuse your partner just for your own pleasure. And so that's one of the things that we teach strongly is make sure your partner is okay with it if you're trying a new position or a new whatever, make sure they're okay with that. You shouldn't just dive in and push them to it. Don't tie them to the bed and then do things that they're uncomfortable with.
there's that, and it's, when you mentioned about entitlement, like, could you talk a little bit more about, someone that's on the receiving end of someone that feels entitled?
So like if your partner feels entitled, you're saying?
Yes.
So I think that entitlement will often lead to different types of abuse depending on how bad the entitlement is. Some people would also say that, we are entitled, which I don't believe we're entitled to anything, so to speak. You should be able to encourage that person and create desire within that person to give you what you feel like you're entitled to or that you feel like you want. Whether that's physical intimacy or emotional intimacy, whatever it might be, you should be able to try to make your partner want to give you that. And sometimes it's just communication, just letting them know, I really feel like I need to connect with you emotionally. I have no problem getting frisky after we're done, but can we just take 1 hour? I'd really like to connect with you. I'd like to talk about our day, how it went. I'd like to understand how your day went. What did you do at work? How did it go? And sometimes we just need that time. And so telling them, giving them, especially for a man, he needs a time period. Now, one of the things you have to understand, don't tell a man 5 minutes and then try to take an hour. Because for a man, 5 minutes is 5 minutes. For a woman, she says 5 more minutes. That's an indefinite amount of time. So we do have differing terms as well. She says 5 more minutes. You might as well sit down and take a nap because it could be a while. It's kind of fun. We see a lot of differences, but that's okay. And you have to learn that men, when you say 5 minutes, they mean 5 minutes. If you tell them 5 minutes, they're really sitting in front of the steering wheel ready to drive out in 5 minutes. They're not going, huh, you're done. I guess I'll turn the TV off now. So it is just fun. And it's just a variety of the way we see and think. It's the way we describe things. Now, why it's that different, I don't know. But I've just found that almost every couple, the woman says 5 more minutes, she means an indefinite amount of time. Means I'm working on it, but I'll get there when I get there. A man says 5 more minutes, he means it's going to be probably 4.5 to 5 minutes, and that's it. He'll be there and you can go. So it's just a difference. It's the way we see it. Just like if a woman says, I'm going in the store to get one item, she means one cartful, not one item. A man says he's going for one item. He walks to that one item, picks it up, goes back to the cash register, leaves the store with one item. That's not how a woman shops. I need one item. She'll come out with 300 items in a cartful, and that's how it
Mhm.
works. You just have to understand there's difference in the way we see it and understand it. And men don't understand if you say one item, we think you're going to get that one item. You're not going to walk through the whole store seeing what else is on sale and what else jogs your memory of, oh, yeah, I need baby food and I need diapers. And I forgot I'm out of cottage cheese. And I forgot we're getting low on milk and I only have 1 dozen eggs left. I better get another one. And whatever it is, all of a sudden your memory's jogged and you're going through the store picking up things that you remember, but you never wrote them down. Men don't operate that way. When we go shopping, we have one thing on our mind, whatever's on the list, we go get that one item. We literally walk straight to that aisle, pick up that one item, walk straight to the cash register, and we look at nothing else. So it's just a difference in the way we're made. As you probably know, when you were married,
Mhm.
it was definitely different, right?
Oh, for sure. I remember, our budget.
Yep.
Uh, I think My ex-husband was very cheap, and so, he would try to see if
What do
we
you
could
mean
get
by cheap?
groceries for $60 a week in
Okay.
groceries for the 2 of us. So that's what we would do. We would try to
So he
get
budgeted very tightly.
our yeah, so
Yeah, the
so
squeaky
I was,
clean
like,
budget, huh?
running around the store trying to figure out
Yeah,
how to fit what I
every little
wanted
thing.
into $60.
Yep,
So
and
then,
that's challenging.
after the divorce, I was like, "I'm just gonna get what I want," but then then I had to find a new way to budget.
Yeah. Well, one thing that men don't understand, as you mentioned earlier about even a sock on the floor, women in general tend to be more of an organizer and more organized in general than men do. However, it can be reversed. Some men are super organized and some women could care less. But in general, a lot of women are more organized, and especially if they are tending to be the homemaker and he's the breadwinner, most men don't care as much about a sock on the floor because when they come home, they're tired, they're wore out. You know what? Depending on what they did, they might just be a cube monkey, so to speak, and sit in a cube. But on the other hand, if they're out in the physical labor realm, you know, it may be a totally different scenario where he is physically exhausted. So, you just have to understand each other's roles. And that's where clear communication comes in. You have to communicate about how you're feeling, what's bothering you, what you need. Maybe you need more time. Maybe you need time away from the kids for an hour. Can your husband watch the kids for an hour? Or can he sit down and read them a story so that you can breathe? Or do the dishes or put on some music or go get a bubble bath. Sometimes we just need some time to reboot, do a little reset. And
Yeah.
I think men just don't understand that. They come home and they think it's time for their reset, not realizing, look, if you want to get frisky later, you're going to need to help your wife have a reset so she's ready to go and feeling fresh. And maybe she just needs a hot shower. So watch the kids, do the dishes, do some things for her, take that load off of her plate and let her now go take a break. Because for men, we can switch boxes pretty quickly. It's much harder for a woman to close out all those windows and, so to speak, put them to rest because she has to complete every window or every tab in her browser. And so that's just a difference in the way we're wired. And that's okay. There's nothing wrong with it. It doesn't mean men are right and women are wrong or vice versa. It just means we're different. And that's all right. We just have to learn to work with, whoever your partner is in the way that they need. And that's the biggest challenge is clear communication. If you don't understand their needs, how are you ever going to meet them?
Yeah, and I think in that communication, there's also the listening part, like, really understanding how to listen.
Well, and you nailed a big point there. Listening is just as important as speaking. Actually, it's more important for the men because men, God gave you two ears and one mouth. So don't just talk to or tell your wife off, tell her how wrong she is or how to fix everything. Sometimes women just need you men to listen and hear them out. They just want to know you listened, you understood, and you cared. Now, there's another different type of listening we found is you need to learn how to listen to understand, not listen to respond, because so many times we just listen to coin our own response, and that's all we're listening after that we've coined our response. Now we're just waiting for a half a second where we can slip it in there or interrupt them and give them our response. We're no longer actually listening to understand, and we don't even care what they're saying now, and it's just in essence going in one ear and out the other. So that's a big challenge for couples is they listen to respond instead of listening to understand. It's crucial to sometimes ask clarifying questions. Are you saying this? Can you tell me more? How did that make you feel when the kid fell or spilled their milk or whatever happened? Ask your spouse about their day. When that happened, how did you feel? You felt like a total failure. I can totally understand. That's terrible. That had to have been hard. You probably felt like crying. So begin to help understand their feelings and why they had a rough day. And all of a sudden, they're ready to melt into your arms. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I think there's sorry.
No, go ahead.
I was just gonna say, sometimes just like there, women often cut men off, like, they'll ask a question, and they're already on to the next question. So,
Yep.
maybe you can speak to that,
Well, a part of that
having that
again comes back to the
experience.
difference in men and women. Yeah, men tend to be fixers. And so when a woman tells a man her problems, he thinks the only reason she would tell him her problems is because she wants a solution. She wants him to fix that problem. So he immediately is thinking about solutions and ways to fix it. He doesn't stop and listen to how she really felt, how that made her feel when that happened, or when her friend told her that, or when her mom, whatever. And so we as men tend to just look for solutions. And most of the time, the best solution to the woman is just listen to me, hear me out, understand how I felt. And I think that's one of the big challenges that a lot of couples and relationships go through is they aren't even on the same page. One's trying to fix while the other is trying to get their point across, and it just isn't jiving. And it's just mass miscommunication because neither one is really communicating. Obviously, if you just want them to listen, just tell them, look, I just need you to listen and hear me out for a minute. I want to explain to you about my day. So men can't read your mind. And that's one of the challenges. Women often will read between the lines of what your friend or your mom is telling you, and you get exactly what they're saying because women are good at that. Men are not. If you don't say it, we don't have a clue what you're saying. So that's just one of the big differences. Men are not good mind readers. And so you have to tell a man specifically what you need, when you need it, how you need it, what you're feeling, and why you feel you need it. And that will help them to be able to give that, especially if, now, obviously, you can't just tell a man, I need to have emotional connection for the next several hours. That's a very indefinite amount of time. If you say the next half hour or the next 1 hour, then we can have some fun. Great. Now he's in, but he needs to know there's got to be a deadline. There's got to be a cutoff because, when we first got together, there was times she'd be like, we need to connect. And it was 8 hours of talking. And I'm like, well, when's this going to end? 8 hours later, I'm about dead over here. Yeah, I'm emotionally drained now. You have to almost give it to them in bite-sized portions. You can't give them, a week's worth of
Oh my
emotional
god.
intimacy, in one dose. It's too much. They OD'd on your emotional connection.
Well, I think that's very interesting too because there's a very big difference between the intimacy between your partner and yourself, and to even be able to have the awareness
Mhm.
that you're dumping everything onto your partner.
Absolutely.
So could you maybe talk a little bit more about that?
So emotional dumping can be done by either side, either men or women. Women probably tend to emotionally dump more than men. A lot of men will bury it. And the problem with men burying their emotions is they often become bitter and hard. And part of that is the way we're raised. And I'm sure you've heard the old adage or phrase, or whatever they call it, where they say that, sticks and stones may hurt my bones, but words will never hurt me. And that is so backward. Words will actually hurt us for many times the rest of our lives. Like there's things I heard, positive and negative, that I still remember from when I was a young child. And so understanding the difference, if you unload on a man, that's fine for you. Now you feel better, like you have a lighter load. Now he feels like he's trying to carry your load plus his load because he didn't get to unload on you. And most men won't unload because they don't feel like you have a solution for them. And the only reason a man would quote unquote emotionally dump, he's looking for a solution. Because remember, men are fixers, so they're looking for solutions. Women are simply looking for someone to hear them out, understand where they're coming from, and understand their feelings. So men are not as emotionally driven. Therefore, their emotions, and you've probably also seen how a lot of men are told you're bigger than that. Real men don't cry, etc. So when we're young boys and we hear that, we think if I'm a real man, I can't cry. I can't allow myself to cry. I can't allow anyone to enter and see my weak side that I am emotional. Now, one of the books I actually wrote was called True Emotional Nudity. And I wrote that for men to help them realize it's okay to not be okay all the time. It's okay to let a tear out. It's okay to be real, to be authentic. It's okay to admit you're struggling with something. There's nothing wrong with struggling. It just means you're growing. But so many men won't even admit they're struggling with something. They don't even know or admit they have emotional struggles. Like, just as an example, I saw at my grandmother's funeral, my dad didn't even shed a tear. I could tell he was struggling to hold them back, but I realized there's a problem. If your own mother dies and you can't cry at the funeral, there's a problem. There's an emotional barrier there that you cannot release your own emotions and you leave them pent up, it makes you a very angry, very bitter person. You can only bottle so much emotion before you begin to have a lot of triggers. And once you're triggered, now you explode on somebody. And so I think that's one reason a lot of men are very explosive in their anger. And a lot of them will turn to drinking and going out with their buddies because they feel like their wife doesn't understand. They're bottling things up. She's unloading. So now he's carrying your emotional baggage in a sense. Emotionally, he's carrying yours. He can't really share it back with you because he's not allowed to show his emotional side. And so it just becomes kind of a unfair balance, if you want to call it, where you unload. Now you feel like you're fine, but now he's carrying yours and his, and he can't emotionally unload because he wouldn't be a real man. So that kind of creates a struggle inside a lot of men where they don't know what to do with it now, especially if you reject their advances or even just reject their quote unquote solutions. They feel like you're rejecting them. And that's one of the toughest things for men, especially if they're making physical advances. Because remember, you're not the only woman in the world. There's 5, 6 billion other women trying to get your man's attention too. And it's the same vice versa. There's just as many men out there that would love to have you as a woman. And so you have to look at, if you're not the only female in the world, he's got other women and he's trying to stay true to you. And so he's making advances. He's making physical suggestions and advances and teasing you and whatever. If you reject that, he feels as a man that he's being rejected. And all of a sudden, the secretary at work, who's always so grateful and joyful and smiley and thank you so much and you're the best, that now becomes more attractive than the wife who's always complaining. Does that make sense?
Totally.
Now, I would advocate that he should now go to his secretary at work or whatever else. Absolutely not. But I think that we just have to understand the emotional difference and the psychological difference in the way men and women handle emotions and how men tend to bottle it and women tend to dump it, so to speak. Because as a woman, if your man says, okay, let's sit down and talk, you're like, okay, great. Now I'm just going to dump my whole day on you in one big episode. And the men are like, well, what do I do with all this? Now what?
Yeah.
Now they just shut
Yeah,
down.
women
Go ahead.
yes. I was just gonna say that, some women just aren't even aware. Like, they're swimming in so much, they're not even aware that they're dumping.
I agree.
So having the intimacy with yourself is really the awareness of how you're interacting with your partner.
Well, and taking
Because
time
if
alone
you're
is important. Like you said, having intimacy with yourself, having some time alone in the morning, in the evening, before you get up or before you go to bed, spend some time in a bubble bath or listening to an audiobook or, like you said, journaling sometimes helps. There's a lot of things that you as a woman can do to basically organize your thoughts and your feelings as to what should I share? What do I need to share? Sometimes you could call and unload with a female friend and she's going to understand you and give you the emotional support you really need. And now you don't have to emotionally dump on your partner, which is now going to make him shut down emotionally. And now he wants nothing to do with you because he's just like, whoa, hold on, I'm on overload. I can't handle anymore. And so he shuts down and backs away. And now you suddenly want physical intimacy and he's no longer interested because now he's
Mhm.
just, in shutdown mode.
Yeah, it's, just thinking about it gives me a
And I wish you could go back and start over.
Yeah.
There's a lot to work on. And that's the interesting thing. Nobody really sits down with singles and tells them all these different intricacies of a relationship and how different men and women really are. And we all think we're different because we're in love. Everything's just going to, you know, blossom and it's just going to be a beautiful bed of roses and nothing's going to ever go wrong. No, you're still going to have bills come due. You're still going to have kids crying in the middle of the night. Things happen. We get sick and we puke on the carpet and now somebody's got to clean it up. Those things happen. But again, you can't get mad at your partner. And that's one of the things we often see is partners turn against each other instead of realizing we're a team. We're an us. We have to find a way through this together. And when you start battling your spouse as your enemy, all of a sudden you turn on each other instead of working with each other. So that's the biggest challenge we see is most couples begin to see their partner as their adversary instead of all of the things that happen to them. And my dad was very wise. He said, you can't control what happens to you. You can only control your response to what happens to you. And it's the same with your partner. You can't control what they do or say to you necessarily, but you can control your response to it. And so it's very crucial that we all work on our own responses. Work on yourself first. You cannot fix your spouse. And that's one of the challenges with men. They think they can fix their spouse. They can make their wife be, the physical person they really want them to be. And the women think they can fix their husband and make him the emotional person she needs him to be. And so we all have this mental thought, well, when I marry him, I'll be able to fix them. They'll understand me. They'll be the perfect person because I'm going to help them learn how to, fix my needs. And we don't get married to see how much we can serve the other person. In most cases, we get married to let them serve us. We think they're going to fix my needs. Women often think, well, then I'll be able to talk to him all night, or, I'll be able to sit down and watch a movie with him whenever I want. And men think I'm going to be able to have sex every night. Well, not necessarily, because all of a sudden you're pregnant and you're tired every night, or you have morning sickness in the morning and you're whooped at night. You're not going to feel like having sex every day. And he doesn't realize that. And then he feels like something's broken. And so there's lots of things in life that come up that can now keep that physical intimacy, which for a man recharges his battery. And oftentimes for a woman, that emotional connection recharges your battery. And so you can also look at it as a love tank. If a woman has an emotional connection, her love tank gets refilled. If a man has physical intimacy, his love tank gets refilled. And so you just have to understand there are different things that fill each other's love tank. If they're getting a little grouchy, ask them what you could do to help them. Maybe you need physical intimacy. Even if you don't feel like it in the moment, give it to them because that helps recharge their battery. Now all of a sudden they become nice and they want to hear about your day. Now they give you the emotional support that you needed, even though you wanted that first. Sometimes you have to give the other person because they're just simply grouchy and they're not going to give you the emotional support anyways.
Fascinating.
So,
If only I had you before when I got married.
well, that's one of the things we love to do. We love to sit down with couples, and that's why we go through a lot of what we call like focus groups or small groups, where we get 4 or 5 couples together and we sit down and we talk about specific things. Like we may talk about physical intimacy, we may talk about communication. We do a lot of small groups on communication because every area of your life, whether you're talking about bills and budgeting, or whether you're talking about kids and, outside activities, whether you're talking about whatever it is, you have to be able to be on the same page. And so pretty much everything, including physical intimacy, comes back to communication. Now, here's the interesting part. How many types of communication are there?
Gosh, there's got to be a
Pretty
ton.
much endless, depending on the person, right?
Yeah.
One of the interesting things is most people fail to read body language.
Okay.
Body language is an
Yeah.
interesting one. And so if you watch someone's body language, you can tell they're tired, they're wore out, or they're frustrated, or they're upset, or there's something bothering them from work that they didn't get to hash out with their coworker, or whatever. And so you can easily say, it seems like something's bothering you. Would you like to talk about it, or would you rather wait until later? Give them that out. Maybe they're not ready to talk about it. Maybe they're still trying to understand their own feelings. Now, obviously, if a woman pesters a man, like, tell me, come on, tell me, you can't keep it from me. We don't keep secrets, and you just hound them and hound them and hound them. They may tell you, but now it makes them upset at you because you're forcing something that they're not even ready. They're still trying to figure out how they feel. Now you're trying to get them to tell you how they feel before they even know how they feel. Because
Yeah.
for a man, it's mind boggling just to figure out how he feels. Most men, you ask them how they feel, they're like, don't know. Do I have a feeling? Like, I don't know. Hadn't thought about it that far. It's kind of like women, it's really funny. If you ask a woman about her day, she knows who said what at what time of day, what they were wearing, how their hair was fixed, and where they had makeup on, all these different things. A man's like, well, yeah, today was a day. Let's see, I went to work and I came home. Well, did you have lunch at work? Yeah, I guess I ate lunch. I don't think it's in my lunchbox anymore. I think I ate it. Can't remember. Yeah. So men just do not tie any events to emotions, where a woman can remember everything pretty much verbatim because it's all tied to an emotion. And so that's a massive difference in the way we were made. Men's brains and women's brains are just two completely different things. And just for the fun of it, just watch it on YouTube. Men's brains versus women's brains, or you can type in laugh your way to a better marriage. And it's just absolutely hilarious. I mean, he has some of the funniest illustrations of how men think and respond versus how women think and respond, and why there's so much confusion and mass miscommunication. It's because we simply think and respond differently. And it's not bad, it's just different. So you just have to understand they're not going to take this the way I do. They're not going to respond the way I would. That's okay. It's not wrong. It's not like one's better than the other. It's just different, and that's okay. But that's the challenge as a couple, is how do you really understand your partner? Are you able to meet them on their page, so to speak, find out what they need, and hopefully try to meet them. And that's the challenge. Can you do that? And to the extent you can do that depends on how well your relationship thrives or how hard it is, to struggle to keep it afloat, so to speak. Sometimes one partner feels like they're doing everything to keep it afloat, where the other partner, doesn't seem to be doing much. And sometimes it just is that way. Some partners go through different phases, but you just have to realize sometimes there's going to be more responsibility on your shoulders to keep it afloat or to do more or feel like you're doing more at least. But he may feel so you might feel like you're doing 80% and he's only doing 20. But he also doesn't see everything you do while he's at work. So he thinks he's doing 80% and you're only doing 20 because he only sees the little bit you do when he gets home from work before you go to bed. He's like, well, you're not doing that much. I mean, look what I did. I worked 8 hours today, whatever. And so you just have to understand there's just a difference. Both partners may think they're pulling the 80% load and the other partner's only pulling 20. Have you ever
Yeah,
heard the phrase that marriage is like 50-50? Have you ever heard that?
I've heard of it.
It doesn't work. Did you know that? So if you
Mm,
go into marriage with a 50-50 arrangement or agreement, or you think that's how it works, it doesn't work. Marriage has to be 100%, 100%. You both have to be 100% all in, giving to the relationship. Because if you're both all in, nothing can take you out. You have to be all in, all the way committed to do whatever it takes. So even if I come home tired, I have to be willing to help with the dishes or vacuum the floor or dust or do the laundry or run get some groceries or take the baby for a while so she can relax. Whatever it might be, we have to do what needs to be done because in a relationship, we're a team. And so it's like our family unit is its own separate unit. And whatever needs to be done, we're both co owners in a sense. Whatever needs to be done to keep the lights on has to be done. We can't expect one person to pull all the weight and the other person's just a freeloader. It just doesn't work that way.
yeah, there's that, and I think sometimes, when you start doing work on yourself, like truly coming to awareness of yourself,
That helps.
you, people don't see it until you go through the transformation,
Yep.
and they're like, "Oh, how did she get those results?" They don't see all the
Yep.
work.
That's so true.
They're just like, "She just walked in the door.
Yep.
She's a millionaire," you know?
Yeah. They only see the very peak of the mountain, right? The peak of the iceberg. The whole rest underwater
Yeah.
is all the stuff you did behind the scenes. They don't see the hundreds of hours of self development and energy work and cleansing and all that stuff that goes on behind the scenes. Most people only go, wow, overnight you're a millionaire. How did that happen? What's your trick? And what's your secret? And give me your hack. It's not a hack. It's hard work. It's personal development. If you're not going to make more than you're worth. Now, one of the interesting things we should talk about before we get off here, just as a thought, where did you and I meet?
Owl.
Owl. Now, how would you describe Owl just for fun, just to shift the focus for a second?
I describe it as a quick networking app.
It basically is. But it's so much more than that. If any of your listeners are looking for that platform, it's OWWLL. So it has two W's, two L's, but it is owl and it said owl just like the owl bird, the night owl, but it has two W's and two L's. It's in the App Store or the Play Store if you're on Android. But the cool part is you could reach Crystal or myself and you can see when we're available to take a call. So now you can call and talk to us live one on one. So, how cool is that? If you have a question, or maybe you have someone that needs to connect with either one or both of us, you can just send them over to Owl. And if you use Crystal's referral code, you're going to get $10 that you can now use to call her. So that way you don't have to take money out of your bank account or off your credit card. You can actually call her on the Owl dime. So, just a little plug for Owl because we met there. It's a great platform. And I've met a lot of other amazing people there. Matter of fact, thousands of people are now using that platform.
Yeah, what I love is you can connect right away. Like, I just think of all the people that are in the job market right now,
Yep,
and you 24 hours a day, it's open, and there's people looking to connect,
absolutely.
and, you start immediately, and there's so many people, so many different categories, I think it is, right? It's a
Yeah,
category?
there's a lot of categories. There's a lot of different groups and expertises. So yeah, there's a lot of ways to find who you're looking for, but I've used it to connect with people like when I needed a web developer to help me fix something on my website. I connected with one. I needed some medical professionals. I needed a lawyer at one point. That is a great way to find what you really need. Maybe you just need a life coach or a relationship coach, or in your case, maybe you need someone to help you clean up your own mental chaos. Whatever it might be. If you got to do some personal cleansing, then find someone like Crystal to help you do that.
Or Brian to talk about your relationship.
Well, and you know what's
Dump
funny,
all your
Crystal?
problems.
Everybody is in a relationship with yourself, with God, with your partner, with your parents, with your kids. We're all in relationships, even your coworkers. And if you don't have any coworkers, means you work for yourself, then you have your clients. So we're all in relationships. How do you handle those? How do you communicate? How do people see and understand you? What do you want to be remembered by? There's so many different things to look at in relation to relationships. So relationships are super important. They can make or break you, so to speak. I think they say that the size of your network is also the size of your net worth. And there is a lot of value to that because you think about based on the quality of your relationships will also depend on the quality of your network. And the more you build relationships, the more people will know, like, and trust you, the more they will do business with you, and the more they will refer you to people they know that need you. And that's one of the reasons I haven't personally had to advertise my business in over 30 years.
That's awesome.
So there's a lot to learn about relationships and how to build them, but it's fun, it's easy, and it's just being intentional. And OWL is a huge key to that. OWL is one of the easiest ways to build relationships. As you saw, we only had 2 conversations, and here we are doing a broadcast together. How cool is that?
I know, and we've been talking for 55 minutes.
It feels like 10 minutes, right? It goes quick when
Not
you're having fun.
including our hour conversations.
Yeah, but life is fun, and that's how you make friends. And I've made some really good friends on OWL just from having audio, in essence, phone conversations. And one of the coolest things that I love about OWL, you don't have to put your phone number everywhere. Nobody on OWL has your phone number unless you become friends and you want to give them your personal phone number. You can do that. However, you don't have to. So that adds an extra layer of privacy, especially if you're an influencer or a celebrity of some kind, or you're, a high ranking attorney or public official or something. You don't have to put your number out there. What if you're a teacher and you don't want all your kids or your kids' parents having your private cell number? You don't have to do that. So it's a great way to keep your privacy, but still be able to interact and have, one-on-one conversations and get the help you need.
Exactly. Well,
So do you know what your
thank you.
OWL referral code is in case somebody wants to sign up for OWL and give you a call?
I will put it in the description box below.
That'll work. She'll put it in the description so you can grab her code. You can find the OWL app, which is 2 W's, 2 L's. So it'd be OWWLL, and you can find that in the App Store. Then you just use her code as your referral code and you get your 10 bucks and you can give her a call.
Me, or you can call Brian. You can talk all about your relationships.
Crystal wants to talk about them too. Don't worry.
Sure, we could talk about relationships.
Yeah, absolutely.
I help all kinds of people with relationships.
Yeah, and I know we're getting close to an
Actually,
hour, so however you want to wind it
yeah,
up is good to go for me.
yeah, 90% of, my calls are just the listening point, but there's curbing it to what you need,
Absolutely.
which Brian talked about earlier.
Got to
All right,
find
thank
what's
you so
important.
much for coming on, Brian, and
Absolutely. Thank you for having me, Crystal.
yeah, we'll see you next time.
All
Bye.
right.
Thanks for watching.